Goedemiddag. Ik open de vergadering van de vaste commissie voor Buitenlandse Zaken. Het betreft hier een rondetafelgesprek. Hartelijk welkom aan al onze gasten. Welkom aan de collega's. En we gaan dit doen in het Engels. Dus de rest van het programma zullen we in het Engels doen. So, welcome to our dear guests. Welcome in the House of Commons. You're here a guest of the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs. I would like to give you the floor to give an introduction of a maximum of 5 minutes. And then there will be the opportunity for the members of parliament to ask you some questions. So please, if I can first give the floor to Mr. Jazzy. Yes. And if you could use the microphone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you finished your introduction, if you also could close the microphone.
Absolutely, I will.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. I'd like to thank first the Standing Committee of Foreign Affairs of the Tweede Kamer for organizing this very timely public panel, and I appreciate your openness and willingness to participate in thinking about Iran. My name is Arash Jazzy, and I'm trained as a historian and specialized in the politics, culture, media of Iran. And this is the position from which I speak at this panel today. In the 5 minutes, very short time that I have to address this committee, I'll list 3 points that I think would be important for the upcoming challenges that any European institutions will be facing in their future relationships with Iran, including the Dutch government. First point I want to mention is that even though the situation is very noisy right now in Iran, and it's becoming very hard for all of us in Europe, at least, to know what's really happening inside the country, inside the regime more specifically, we should begin with the premise that whatever political preferences Iranians have, republicanism, monarchism, federalism, and so on, they want a free, democratic, secular country. This is the bare minimum of demands. And the statistical work on that is already done. We don't have time to reproduce them for you. I'm sure you've heard of this. We know it. Iranians want removing power and privilege from all religious institutions. This is clear. This is straightforward. This means that the Iranians will not accept living with a moderate, reasonable Islamic regime, well, without the nuclear program, with the same religious institutions, having the same power, and having the same kind of privileges. That's not going to work. People in Iran don't want the Islamic regime in any form. Islamic regime has become the same as economic collapse. That means crackdown. It has been perceived as misogyny, human rights abuse, mass killings, and an absolute unwillingness to change for the people. And it will continue to kill secular life in all its forms, as far as it exists. We should know this. This must be clear. Now, this means that the European institutions who have to work for any practical reason with this regime in the future, hopefully not for too long, need a diplomatic and supervisory structure, that prioritizes the protection of life in Iran, the protection of secular life in Iran over and above economic relationships with the regime. I can imagine that the Tweede Kamer has the tools to think of effective mechanisms to make this ethical supervision work. And if you see the Dutch government as a secular government, make it act as a secular government in its international relations as well. And this would not necessarily mean being blind to your trade partner's religious identity in the name of respect for other cultures, but the exact opposite. It means having a program that recognizes political Islam in its different forms and either avoids working with it entirely or on condition that it behaves. So even if they appear in any relationship they have with you, people with rational decision-making, this does not mean that they are secular people, as long as they continue to kill, they continue to discriminate against women, against minorities, and against non-religious people. So that approach would not be disrespect for other cultures, it would be recognition and respect for the secular choices of other cultures. Second point I wish to make is that we all need more structured collaborations between European governments, the parliaments, all the institutions that work with them, and the informed communities of Iranian diaspora. The only way forward for all of us is to work with the Iranian diaspora, with the secular Iranian diaspora people. That's the only way, not with regime apologetics, not with regime lobbyists. I hope that that period is over. And our public performances here, Iranian in diaspora, show clearly well who is who. You can clearly see the distinctions. Now, people in Iranian diaspora has useful skill, has useful knowledge about what's going on in Iran and about creating more networks and meaningful relationships. And there is compelling historical evidence in favor of the power of diaspora people. We haven't used them enough. We need to use that power more responsibly. And the third and the final point I want to make, hopefully very short, is personality politics. We have many opposition representatives who has been helping with gaining public rallies, public attention, create global awareness about Iran. Very helpful sometimes. But just like the rest of us Iranians in diaspora, they don't have an actionable program for changing the regime. And if they claim to do so, and that's an important point, and I think this is important for you to also raise in this closed panel, in the third and the fourth panels, it does not mean, it doesn't seem to be working, whatever programs people claim to have. So we need to find ways to help creating these programs with a diverse range of secular people, including the faces of opposition, of course. And I don't know how that's going to work. This is just a weakness that I recognize among ourselves and I wish to raise and I wish to address directly and clearly. So these were the 3 points I wanted to make. Thank you for listening and I look forward to your questions and discussions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Josie. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Rezai Daria Kamari.
Great to pronouncing my name. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay, Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the invitation. My name is Babak Rezai. I'm an associate professor of international relations at Leiden University, where I study protest and repression in autocracies. I'm Iranian from an ethnic minority, the Gilaks, and I'm Dutch citizen. I speak here in my personal capacity as a researcher. The voice most often missing from our debate on Iran is the one that matters most, the Iranian public. What fills that silence instead is partial framing. Sincere, but partial. So let me bring the public in through evidence. The Islamic Republic is weaker than ever, but not gentler. If anything, more dangerous. You know what happened on 8th and 9th of January, the largest killing in Iran's modern history. And it has not stopped. More than 2,000 people were executed last year. And this year, the pace is even faster, about 5 executions a day. Many more are waiting on death row. And yet, the sentence we hear too often from some European politicians is this: the regime is terrible, but Iranians are divided. But disagreement is not weakness, it is politics. This very parliament knows how hard coalition building is. Iranians are still building their democratic capacities. So respectfully, the sentence, Iranians are divided, too often becomes an excuse to do nothing or to keep the response symbolic. In fact, there is less division than many assume, especially inside Iran. My own 3-wave survey shows 2 clear and stable findings. First, most Iranians want to replace the Islamic Republic, not reform it. Second, their trust is not scattered. Wave after wave, and by a wide margin, it gathers around one figure, Reza Pahlavi. And this is not limited to the center of the country. It appears across regions. This is what 2 independent studies shows, mine and Gamon's, the public opinion project at Tilburg and Utrecht universities. The Women Life Freedom movement also shows how flawed the divided Iranian story can be. The killing in custody of a Kurdish woman, Mahsa Jina Amini, brought the whole country into the streets, across every ethnic groups and regional lines. Among those later executed was a young man, Majid Reza Rahnavard, hanged with a broken arm, broken because it bore a tattoo of the lion and sun. A monarchist from East dying in support of a Kurdish woman from the West. That is not a people hopelessly divided. Most Iranians share a demand for human rights and democratic values. Of course, there are disagreements about the future, federal or unitary, republic or constitutional monarchy, but these are questions of how to build a state, which every democracy answers differently. The Netherlands is a constitutional monarchy. Germany, a federal republic. Minority rights to language, culture, and religion must be guaranteed. But the shape of the state is for Iranians to decide at the ballot box. So, how should we judge the opposition? I suggest one test. Does a group offer a clear, open plan, or define itself only by who it opposes? Mr. Motadi, in panel 3, has stressed the rights of the Kurds to their language and culture in Iran. Mr. Pahlavi, in panel 4, has put forward 4 principles in writing: Iran's territorial integrity, a secular state, equal rights and individual freedom, and a ballot box to choose the form of the state. He is today the most prominent opponent of the Islamic Republic inside and outside of Iran, and on the evidence, the figure most Iranians look to lead a transition toward a free, democratic Iran under the rule of law. So, I would ask you to look at the opposition figures and their plans directly, not through the image painted by their rivals, to hold everyone to the same democratic test. I have several suggestions for what the Netherlands and EU can do, and I would welcome the chance to discuss them with you in the Q&A. To conclude, the real question is whether Europe will keep treating the Islamic Republic as permanent. Iranians have already decided it is not. Help them, and you will save lives, and make the Netherlands and Europe safer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Sede to ask a question. If you please could tell who you are asking the question to.
Thank you. I'm the Senior Member of Parliament for the Christian Union. I have a question concerning the response of the EU and the Netherlands the last couple of months after the attacks where 10,000 of people were killed in Iran, because the responses were divided, and we're seeing, at least from my perspective, we're seeing that it's difficult to raise a momentum against the Iranian regime. And my question is, how do you feel, or how do you assess the Dutch and the European standpoint and actions that were taken, and how could the the EU help in the points that you were both addressing towards a transfer of hopefully a democratic system where the people of Iran and the different people, communities can also thrive? That question is for who wants to answer, but I think I'll ask Mr. Yazi first, and if you want to reflect as well, that's fine.
We collect first some questions, so if you don't mind. Yes. Ms. Maas.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your introductions. We have spoken to many members of the diaspora in the past months, I have at least, and something I would like to ask is about the division between all the groups that we've talked to. Because you mentioned, Mr. Yazi, I think it was you who mentioned that it's important for the diaspora to play a role to make form Iran into a democratic country. But I was wondering, how do you think the diaspora can come together? Because yes, I think in Iran the differences are big, but also in the diaspora the differences among how Iran can turn into a democratic country, they are different. And I'd like to hear from you, Mr. Yazi, but Mr. Rezaieh can also answer the question.
Thank you. Ms. Abdi.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you also for your opening remarks. I had a question about how the Iranian people feel about the prospects of political reform. Have their hopes for a better future fully disappeared after January crackdown and the war? And if you can say a bit more about the situation of political prisoners and what kind of pressure we can apply from the Netherlands or Europe.
And who do you address for this question?
I address them both to here, Yazi, and here, Rezaieh.
All right. First, Mr. Yazi.
So about the first question, the Dutch response, the European response, well, that is an assessment that is not up to me to do, it's up to the Dutch government to do, or the members of the politicians to do. I would definitely invite them to self-assess. For the diaspora, how do they come together? I think that they don't necessarily have to be united in the same way that no multiplicity of politics or of diplomatic efforts or of any sort of resistance have to be united or coherent in a way that you can have a representative of it and a conical structure of top-down system. It can be multiple, it can have different kinds of voices, it can be a diverse, fragmented space, but it can still function. So, and that's, I think, the role that the European Parliament, European entities or institutions can play, European media can play in making this diversity translatable into policies, translatable into knowledge about Iran, translatable into actionable programs. It doesn't have to be, we have all the tools in the 21st century to make a diverse, fragmented system speak in legitimate voice, to have a legitimate form of expression. It doesn't have to be some 19th century top-down thing that we need, for which we need a representative. That's the answer to diaspora. Diaspora is functioning, not in the best way, but it is functioning, and it has sources to offer. We can take those sources in. And about reforms, the questions, if I may do this and give the floor to you. So the reform, Iranians don't want reform, period, and there is nothing in reform that makes sense anymore. There was a time maybe in the late 90s because of the direct efforts of the European states, especially the German states, to introduce the language of reform through all the Islamic organizations. They operated in Hamburg and other places to tell the world that the Islamic regime is a rational state and that it can operate rationally, reasonably, and can be a weak form of secular state. I don't think we should have any sort of a fantasy about that anymore. And in my view, reform is dead in Iran, and whatever format it may have as a reform, as we can hear that maybe now they're reasonable or whatever, it's absurd, it's meaningless, it doesn't have any political value. And about the political prisoners, the situation, I can only say that it's horrible. I mean, the same thing you've heard 10 years ago, the same thing you heard in 1988, massacres of prisons in Iran, the same thing you heard in the day one of 1979 revolution. What has changed? It's the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rezai.
Thank you for the time. So I'll go over the question one by one. So for the EU and Dutch governments, I give you a benchmark to compare how you are responding to Iran and what's happening to in Iran with Russia. So recently, you decided about having the court in place, right, in the Netherlands. Where is the court for persecuting who are responsible about the massacre in January, right? About the sanctions that you impose, right? My concern is that sanctions are not meant to be effective. They are just to give a signal and make sure that we are imposing sanctions, we are doing something. I would call them symbolic reactions. Regarding division and diaspora, that's the elephant in the room, right? So, but it's not only Iran. All of the movements, when you look at the history, for example, the solidarity movement in Poland, it was divided as well. It's called solidarity, but it was divided. The West helped them to come together and work with each other and move toward the solidarity. Solidarity is the job of the opposition, but I think the Western countries, EU and Netherlands, should facilitate that by bringing all of the opposition together, right? You should accept that we have a diverse society and we have different representatives, but reward those who want to reach a hand and welcome other people to form a coalition, and those making most of the activities in the parliaments and in the media against the opposition leaders, other opposition leaders. Some of the opposition figures may not understand, they are doing it unintentionally. They criticize other opposition members more than criticizing the Islamic Republic. And that's a problem, and you should observe this better, in my humble suggestion, and communicate with them that what you are doing, you understand that. They should come also to their senses if they have, the Dutch, Netherlands has a lot of parties. Not all of the parties are at the table, right? They should accept that some opposition leaders are more popular, some are less popular. It doesn't mean that we want to ignore the rights of those who are smaller, have a smaller group, a smaller support. Human rights guarantees everyone's rights. That should be the baseline. But not everyone sits at the table or doesn't have the same power in coalition making when you have a smaller support. And regarding the prospect of the regime change, I just mirror what my colleague, Dr. Jazzy said. Indeed, stop thinking that the Islamic Republic can reform. 47 years, treat Islamic Republic like an adult in the world, right? They had 47 years to reform, to modify their behaviors. They didn't do it. They don't have an intention to do it. Many people died for the hijab during the woman life freedom. They even made the hijab law even stronger, more strict, decided to punish that, right? So they don't want to reform. They don't welcome the reform. And people inside of Iran know that. I hope the politicians outside of Iran, in Europe and in the US, also understand that reform is not a path. It's done. Regarding political prisoners, it's an awful situation. I said that almost, on average, 5 people are executed per day in 2026. And still we see that the ambassador is here, right? There have been calls for expelling or decreasing diplomatic relationship with the Islamic Republic. If killing 2,000 people, executing 2,000 people, if killing people, executing people during the war at the New Year's Eve of Iranian, Nowruz, is not enough for you to decrease diplomatic relationship with the Islamic Republic, what is enough for you? What else do you want to see? That was it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have a couple of minutes left, so if there is a short follow-up question, I would like... Yeah, Ms. Maas?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a short, I hope it's a short follow-up question. The question is short, but I'm afraid the answer might be a bit longer. We've talked to an expert recently with members of the Commission, and he said to us the only way Iran can have a new democratic government would be by state collapse. How do you look at that?
Yes. Ms. Abdi?
No, thank you for your remarks. I thought clear to state when I asked about reform, I wasn't talking about reform of the current regime. Let me be very clear. I was not talking about that. And maybe to ask a follow-up question, because both of you mentioned you would like help from Netherlands and other European countries to a sort of structured collaboration to facilitate all the minority groups and role, I would assume also of women. So I was wondering, can you be a bit more specific on the details on what you envision for that?
Mr. Mr. Jazzy?
Yes, of course. So the state collapse, that's the expert is right. I think that's the only way that the state. But this doesn't mean that the state collapse is near. This doesn't mean that we don't know. Not that it's far. We don't have any calculated and informed view of what's going to happen. I personally don't have any fantasy about a free democratic future for Iran. I don't see that happening, and I have a more kind of cautious view of that unless the Iranian people are given the agency that they require, both internationally, both in terms of media attention and in terms of the seriousness that European states should be giving them. But in terms of, so that's not an answer, really. It's just an open question. State collapse is a big concept, and we don't know what's happening. But in terms of more details, well, I think this is not the place for me to list too many details about that, but I think the first step would be to recognize Iranian diaspora communities. They exist around, I think some of them are also here in this room in the next panels. And they are working very hard on not in terms of representation of Iranian people or communities, but in terms of doing the groundwork. of how to connect people, what kind of discourse to create about Iran, their rights, they are journalists and writers. So that would be the first one would be a listing of these, knowing who they are, instead of trusting the names of the lobbyists and apologetics to work with.
Thank you. Mr. Rezai Daria Kamari, final words are for you.
That's good.
During this round.
State collapse, I think it's something that how this transition happened requires us actually indeed bringing different experts to have a conversation and discuss this, right? But I don't think that a state collapse happens. The reason through the transition, because if it wanted to happen, actually it could happen as a result of the war that or the invasion that happened by Israel and the U.S., right? So that the state and the society, when we are talking about the collapse, a collapse of a country, we are not talking about the collapse of a state, but the societal collapse as well. And I don't think it didn't happen. Instead, the pressure should be large enough by the EU and the Western countries to bring the country toward a transition point and accept a free, open referendum. And going to the next question, Ms. Abdi, thank you for clarification on the reform. The situation is of course awful and challenging, right? So women's rights at the highest level is something that has been under pressure since it was the first victim of the Islamic Republic right after the revolution. Iranian women have been fighting back very hard, and but they deserve more, and they should receive more support from the EU and the West. I keep it short. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, but we have much more rounds to follow. Thank you so much for your introductions, and thank you so much for the questions. So this is the end of round 2 with the experts on Iran. Now we will proceed with round 2 with Iranian politicians and human rights activists. So. All right, let's proceed with this roundtable, with round 2, Iranian politicians and human rights activists. We do it in exact the same organization of this round, so you get a maximum 5 minutes of introduction, and then there is the opportunity for the members of parliament to ask you any questions. I would just start with Ms. Shiragai.
Thank you, Chair, honourable members of the Parliament. My name is Negin Shiragai. I'm a political strategist, active in the opposition, as well as the founder and director of Azadi Network. So, at the core of Iran's current struggle lies a tension between the politics of I and the politics of we. Across more than a century of political change, one pattern has persisted: the concentration of power in the hands of a few and the imposition of a singular vision on a diverse society. Time and again, political transitions have replaced one eye with another without addressing the deeper crisis of representation. We see this danger resurfacing today. Narratives are emerging that claims to speak for Iran through a single voice, centralized, exclusionary, and often accompanied by calls for militarization and external intervention. These narratives present themselves as solutions, yet they replicate the very logic that has produced Iran's current crisis. But Iran is not an I, it's a we. It's a society of extraordinary diversity, women who have led one of the most amazing, courageous movements of our time, workers and teachers who continue to organize despite the risks of imprisonment, and ethnic and religious communities demanding equal citizenships. War is not a democratic transition strategy. The experience of Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria demonstrate that military intervention does not produce stable democratic institutions. It does not build trust, pluralism, or a political culture that is required for a durable democracy. A path built on violence will not open a space for democratic participation. It will close it further. And instability in Iran will not remain within its borders. It will spill across the region, deepen forced migrations, expand transnational repression that you experienced it here in Netherlands, and directly affects Europe's security and values. Alternative is not the inaction. The alternative is a different framework, the one that is grounded in the politics of we. This means recognizing that sustainable change in Iran can only come through the self-determination of its people. It means supporting the conditions under which the diverse Iranian actors can organize, cooperate, and shape a shared democratic future. This Parliament, and Europe more broadly, can play a meaningful role in it, not by choosing Iran's leader, not by choosing Iran's future, but by helping create the conditions in which the Iranians can freely decide those questions themselves. That requires supporting accountability mechanisms for grave human rights violations that the Islamic Republic is doing right now. The ICC process is one of them. Amnesty International, human rights have amazing recommendations that you can follow. Also, you can ask your embassy in Tehran to be present in the trial of people under execution. That's a practical one step that you can take. Support democratic actors who are undertaking the essential work of cooperation and institutional building. These actions are not symbolic. They directly strengthen the capacity of Iranian society to navigate the change inclusively and in a manner that's consistent with European values and European interests. The question before you is not whether change will come to Iran, but the change is already underway. The question is whether democratic forces, civil society, women, and diverse communities will have the support they need to shape that change in a way that advances stability, human rights, and peace. Because the future of Iran will not be built by governments alone. It will be built by us. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you so much. Mr. Ula, the floor is yours.
Esteemed members of Parliament, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen.
Excuse me. Could you use the microphone? And if you could close your microphone. Thank you.
Okay. Esteemed members of Parliament, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the Dutch Parliament and the Foreign Affairs Committee for giving me this opportunity. My name is Ubaidullah. I'm from occupied Balochistan. I'm a member of the Free Balochistan Movement. FBM Free Balochistan Movement is based in Iranian and Pakistani occupied Balochistan, but here I raise my voice for all Baloch movements. Balochistan, what is Balochistan? Many people do not know or have never heard of Balochistan. Balochistan is not Pakistan. Balochistan is not Iran. Balochistan is Balochistan, with its own history, identity, and culture. Balochistan literally means...
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Please, it's absolutely not allowed. It's absolutely not allowed, and I will not allow it in this room, in this standing committee, that you will intervene from as a public here in this meeting. So please be quiet. Otherwise, I have to ask you to leave this meeting, and I don't want to ask that question. Okay, so we will proceed. Mr. Oela?
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Sorry, nog even in het Nederlands, voor mensen in het Nederlands. In deze vergadering is het absoluut niet toegestaan om u te mengen in deze vergadering. Het is belangrijk dat leden van het parlement kunnen horen wat deze mensen te zeggen hebben hier. Mocht u dat wel doen, dan rest mij niets anders dan u te verwijderen hier uit de zaal. Wij gaan verder.
Thank you. Balochistan is Balochistan, I said, with its own history, identity, and culture. Balochistan literally means the land of the Baloch people. Our country is larger than France in terms of land and area. Like Kurdistan, we are divided among several countries. Balochistan is divided between Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. We were an independent state for centuries. British Empire occupied our country and divided it into three parts. The western part of Balochistan is now called Iranian-occupied Balochistan. The western part of Balochistan was ceded to the Iranian Qajar Empire by British officer General Goldsmith in 1871. Despite it, Balochistan remained the de facto independent until it was conquered and incorporated into Persia by force under Reza Pahlavi in 1928. The Iranian army used air power during campaign, including German and Russian aircraft, to crush Baloch national resistance. Since 1928, the Baloch nation has continued to demand independence, national liberation. We are not a tribe, we are an occupied nation. We do not accept the denial of our existence while we have our own language, culture, and history. In Iran, Baloch land is divided among further within Iran. Baloch land is divided among four provinces, but we are the vast majority along the whole southern coast up to the state Hormuz. You can see that although we are 5% of the population, strategically we matter. The Baloch are among the most persecuted ethnic group in Iran. The Baloch people make up only 5% of Iran's total population, but account for an estimated 20 to 30% of all execution carried out in Iran. We treated as a colony under the Pahlavi regime, and we continue to be treated as a colony under the Islamic Republic, whether under a secular or Shia government, whether under monarchy or mullahs. The Baloch people have demanded freedom. They have always been oppressed for their demand. Baloch political parties have a deep political understanding and cooperation with non-Persian nations within Iran, such as the Kurds, Ahwazi Arab, and Turks. Iran is not exclusively Persian. It is a multi-ethnic state, and non-Persian nations account for more than 50% of its population. Therefore, Iran's future cannot be decided without its non-Persian population. Without the cooperation of these non-Persian nations, the current regime will not collapse. Moreover, no country can ignore 50% of its population. The pre-Balochistan movement has published an economic transitional plan and a democratic political transitional plan for Iran. Basically, this is a transitional plan which decentralizes Iran and grants the right to national self-determination. It does not divide the country in new countries. We're not seeking to divide Iran into pieces. Most of the non-Persian organizations in principle accept the idea of a transition. Nobody accepts a transition in which we again left out of the decision-making process. If the non-Persian left out, they will be forced to move to instant division of Iran. Let's try to avoid that.
Sir, I would like to ask you to come to a conclusion.
Give me 2 minutes at least.
No, sorry. Yeah, everybody has 5 minutes, so I give you at least you already got more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, but I'm closing.
Oh, you're closing.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Let's try to avoid that by supporting an exclusive processes. We reject mullah and monarchy. We demand decentralization and democracy.
I think this is where we end.
But,
sorry, you're at 6 minutes, so that's it. Thank you so much. Mrs. Kandri.
Hi, thank you. I didn't know it was going to be in English, so thanks to ChatGPT, I translated my Dutch.
You can do it in Dutch if you want, because we're in the Dutch Parliament. So
that was what I was thinking, but
yeah, you're absolutely allowed to.
Dutch?
Yeah, of course. Mevrouw Eskandari zal ons in het Nederlands te woord staan.
Is goed. Geachte voorzitter, geachte leden van de Commissie van Buitenlandse Zaken, dank dat ik vandaag het woord mag voeren. Voordat ik begin wil ik 1 ding heel erg duidelijk maken. Ik ben niet de stem van het volk, ik ben niet de Iraanse diaspora. Niemand kan pretenderen de stem van het Iraanse volk te zijn. Iran telt ruim 90 miljoen inwoners. Hun politieke overtuigingen, achtergronden, toekomstvisies zijn divers. Ook de Iraanse diaspora is geen homogene gemeenschap. Spreken alsof 1 persoon, 1 dynasty of 1 politieke beweging namens alle Iraniërs spreekt, is een farce. Als ik mezelf een politiek label mag geven deze dagen, dan gebruik ik de woorden van Sepide Zarinkelk. Ik ben politiek dakloos. Hierin ben ik helaas niet alleen. Veel Iraniërs voelen zich politiek verweest. Ik ben tegen de Islamitische Republiek. Wij willen niet terugkeren naar het verleden. Maar een democratische toekomst waarin iedereen vrij kan leven, ongeacht taal, afkomst, religie of politieke overtuiging. De kern van de Iraanse vrijheidsbeweging bevindt zich nog altijd binnen Iran, in mijn optiek. Daarom moeten we hun namen ook blijven benoemen. Ze bestaan. Wie zijn het? Nargiz Mohammadi, Nasrin Sotoudeh, Reza Khandan, Toumaj Salehi, Parshai Azizi, Gouhar Eshqi, Manoucher Bakhtiari, Golrokh Irai, Sepide Gholian en Parastu Ahmadi. Deze mensen doen ertoe. Zij betalen de prijs, niet met woorden, maar met gevangenschap, marteling, intimidatie en soms met hun leven. Een van mijn volkshelden...
Sorry, 1 seconde. De vraag, het is niet toegestaan om u te mengen in het debat. Doet u het wel, dan wordt u verwijderd. It's not allowed to speak up in this meeting. If you do so, you will be removed. Ik schors de vergadering voor enkele... Ik schors de vergadering voor enkele ogenblikken. Nee, ook voor u geldt. Ook voor u geldt. Ook dit is niet toegestaan. Het is belangrijk dat het parlement alle geluiden kan horen die er zijn. Het gaat niet over de vraag of we het eens zijn met de sprekers of niet. Het parlement moet zich kunnen informeren. Op het moment dat het niet kan, dan ben ik echt genoodzaakt om de hele zaal te ontruimen. Dat wil ik niet. Gaat u verder.
Dank. Zoals een van mijn volkshelden als Iraanse Koerd, Farzad Kamangar, een Koerdische leraar. Hij werd gearresteerd in 2006, gruwelijk gemarteld en in 2010 geëxecuteerd. Zijn naam staat symbool voor duizenden politieke gevangenen en voor de structurele onderdrukking van minderheden in Iran, met name de Koerden. De situatie is schrijnend. Sinds december is de repressie opnieuw verhard. Executies nemen toe. Politieke gevangenen worden sneller en zonder een eerlijk proces veroordeeld. Families worden onder druk gezet. Activisten verdwijnen of worden letterlijk monddood gemaakt. Een hele samenleving wordt gegijzeld op dit moment met angst. Op 8 en 9 januari, het kan niet vaak genoeg benadrukt worden, zijn duizenden mensen op straat vermoord. Door het regime, door het eigen volk. Schattingen lopen uiteen. Tussen 7000 tot mogelijk 30.000 doden. Onder de slachtoffers zijn kinderen, jongeren, studenten, arbeiders en gewone burgers die enkel vrijheid eisten. De cijfers liegen er niet om. 200 vermoorde kinderen en honderden sporters die slachtoffer zijn geworden van repressie. Waarom? Enkel omdat ze vrijheid wilden? Achter iedere cijfer zit een mens, een kind, een moeder, een broer, een zus, een toekomst. Daarom vraag ik u, de commissie, kijk niet alleen naar politiek. Kijk niet naar nucleaire dossiers of geopolitieke belangen. Kijk naar de mensen. Kijk naar de politieke gevangenen, de geëxecuteerden, de minderheden, de vluchtelingen. En laten we het daarover hebben. De vluchtelingen op dit moment hier in Nederland. Meer dan 1000 Iraanse vluchtelingen leven in onzekerheid op dit moment over hun verblijfssituatie. Teruggaan naar Iran kan een doodvonnis zijn. Laten we ze niet vergeten. Zij vallen op dit moment nog meer dan alles tussen wal en schip. En dan kom ik bij de vraag van de vertegenwoordiging. Achter gesloten deuren gaat u zo iemand spreken waarvan u de aanhang al heeft gezien. Mijn vraag aan u, omdat wij er zelf niet bij kunnen zijn, is: kunt u dan deze vragen stellen? In 1979 kwam de Iraanse bevolking in opstand tegen onderdrukking. Ook tegen de Pahlavi-dynastie. Hoe verhoudt de heer Reza Pahlavi zich tot de geschiedenis? Hoe garandeert hij een democratie in Iran met rechten en erkenning voor alle minderheden wanneer hij zich beroept op de autoriteit van een dynastie die destijds dat niet deed? Welke partijen, maatschappelijke organisaties of verzetgroepen op dit moment binnen Iran steunt hij? En waarom wordt het leiderschap van de Iraanse oppositie niet gevormd door de mensen die daar vandaan komen en op dit moment in de gevangenissen zitten, worden gemarteld of geëxecuteerd? Iran is geen homogeen land. Iran bestaat uit Koerden, Balochen, Arabieren, Azeris, Turkmens, Loors, Perzen en zoveel anderen. Een vrij Iran kan alleen bestaan als al deze gemeenschappen worden erkend. Niet als bedreiging, niet als separatisten, maar als gelijkwaardig volk. Ik sluit af, ik zie u al naar de microfoon gaan. Een vrij Iran moet democratisch, pluriform en rechtvaardig zijn. De mensen in Iran vragen u, wij vragen u om vrijheid, waardigheid en leven. Bojin, bojian, bo azadi. Woman, life, freedom. Dank.
Dank u wel. The next speaker on the panel is Mr. Nissi. En meneer Nissi zal ons in het Nederlands te woord staan. Mevrouw Iskander, als u... Ja, het is al gebeurd.
Ja. Geachte voorzitter, geachte leden van de Tweede Kamer. Hartelijk dank voor uw uitnodiging. Ik wil deze gelegenheid gebruiken om aandacht te vragen voor het Ahwazi-volk. Voor degenen die ons niet kennen. De Ahwazi zijn Arabische volk. Volgens ons zijn tussen 10 en 12 miljoen Arabieren. Wij leven voornamelijk in het zuidwesten van Iran, aan het hele oostelijke kust van de Arabische Golf. Wat ik u vandaag wil meegeven, is dat onze leed niet pas begon met de Islamitische Republiek. De onderdrukking van de Ahwazi begon al in 1925 na de val van het Arabische bestuur, toen Reza Pahlavi de moderne Iraanse nazistaat oprichtte. De nieuwe nazistaat werd opgericht en geleid door nationalisten, zoals Reza Pahlavi. Deze nationalisten hebben volgens Iraanse historicus Mehrdad Kia de geschiedenis, cultuur, taal gebruikt om Perzische nationale identiteit te creëren. Daarbij werd de werkelijkheid genegeerd dat Iran geen homogene Perzische land is, maar een mozaïek van verschillende volkeren, talen, culturen en religies. Voor de Ahwazis had dit ingrijpende gevolgen. Onder de Pahlavis werden onze politieke leiders gearresteerd en opgehangen. Veel Arabische stammen werden uit elkaar gehaald en bijeenkomsten werden verboden. Het gebruiken van Arabische taal op scholen en drukwerk werd verboden. Arabische plaatsnamen werden vervangen door de Perzische namen en onze cultuur werd stap voor stap teruggedrongen. Ook economisch werden wij zwaar getroffen. Land van de Arabische families werd onteigend. Hoge belastingen werden opgelegd. En boeren werden gedwongen in het grootste deel van hun oogst aan de staat af te staan. Er wordt vaak gezegd dat Iran een rijke olieland is, maar bijna nooit wordt vermeld dat dat meer dan 85% van Iraanse olie uit Al-Ahwaz komt. Ook strategisch gezien zijn wij als Ahwazi-Arabieren van belang voor Europa. Veel van deze praktijken worden onder de huidige Iraanse regime voortgezet. Het milieu raakt ernstig vervuild. Gezinnen verliezen hun land en Arabieren worden direct en indirect uit hun leefgebied verdwijnen. Demografische veranderingen worden actief gestimuleerd, waardoor de oorspronkelijke bevolking steeds verder wordt verdrongen. Daarnaast worden Soenitische Arabieren, Mendai, gediscrimineerd. Ahwazische vrouwen worden bovendien dubbel getroffen. Als vrouw en als lid van een volk dat zijn nationale en culturele rechten worden ontzegd. De coördinatieraad van Ahwazi-organisatie is ervan overtuigd dat stabiele en vreedzame toekomst voor Iran alleen mogelijk is wanneer alle volkeren gelijkwaardig worden behandeld en hun rechten worden erkend. De afgelopen 100 jaar hebben aangetoond dat het ontkennen van de rechten van niet-Perzische volkeren en niet tot stabiliteit heeft geleid, maar juist tot blijvende spanningen. Dames en heren, ik sluit af met de 2 verzoeken. 1. Neem de rechten van de niet-Perzische volkeren mee in iedere discussie over de toekomst van Iran. 2. Ga regelmatig in gesprek met vertegenwoordigers van de niet-Perzische volkeren. Zonder hun deelname is geen duurzame oplossing mogelijk. Wij vragen geen voorrechten, maar respect voor onze fundamentele rechten en onze recht op zelfbeschikking zoals erkend in het internationale recht. Wie de toekomst van Iran bespreekt zonder de niet-Perzische volkeren laat een wezenlijke deel van het hele land buiten beschouwing. Hartelijk dank voor uw aandacht.
Dank u wel, meneer Nissi. Then we proceed with Mrs. Sahin.
Dank u, sir. Ik zal ook Nederlands spreken. Geachte leden van de Tweede Kamer, dames en heren. Hartelijk dank voor uw uitnodiging om vandaag hier aanwezig te mogen zijn. Mijn naam is Theo Manshine. Vandaag spreek ik tot u als politiek activist en pleitbezorger voor de nationaliteit en fundamentele rechten van de Azerbeidzjanen in Iran. Ik ben hier om de stem te laten horen van miljoenen mensen die al tientallen jaren verstoken zijn van hun fundamentele rechten. Dames en heren, Iran is een land met een rijke etnische, culturele en taalkundige diversiteit. Geen enkel bevolkingsgroep vormt een absolute meerderheid. Azerbeidzjanen, Koerden, Balochen, Arabieren, Turkmenen en andere volken hebben eeuwenlang gezamenlijk bijgedragen aan de geschiedenis, cultuur en ontwikkeling van Iran. De Azerbeidzjanen behoren tot de grootste nationale gemeenschappen van het land en hebben een belangrijke rol gespeeld in de politiek, economisch en maatschappelijke ontwikkeling van Iran. In het noordwesten van Iran rond de Gazarzee zijn als Azerbeidzjanen en andere Turkstalige volken de grote meerderheid. Toch werden zij al bijna een eeuw geconfronteerd met centralisatie, discriminatie en gedwongen assimilatie. In het collectief geheugen van de Azerbeidzjanen staat de Pahlavi-periode niet alleen symbool voor een streek. Geschenlatie staat, maar ook voor de onderdrukking van hun nationale identiteit. Miljoenen Azerbeidzjaanse kinderen kunnen nog steeds geen onderwijs volgen in hun moedertaal. Wij zijn ervan overtuigd dat de toekomst van Iran niet gebouwd kan worden op de voortzeggen van religieuze dictatoren. Een democratische toekomst is alleen mogelijk wanneer het recht op zelfbeschikking van volken volledig wordt erkend. Wij vragen om een Iran dat gebaseerd op vrijheid, democratie, mensenrechten, gelijkheid en de rechtsheid en respect voor de nationale en collectieve diversiteit. Besteedt niet alleen aandacht van het nucleaire dossier of de kwesties rond Iran. Wat kunt u doen? Ten eerste is het van grote belang om de beweging die meerderheid Perzisch zijn duidelijk te maken dat ze een compromis moeten sluiten met de niet-Perzisch. Wij vragen Europa niet om de toekomst van Iran te bepalen. Wij geloven dat alleen vrijheid, rechtvaardigheid, geleid en het recht op zelfbeschikking kunnen leiden tot een verzaam, stabiel, werkelijk democratie in Iran. Hartelijk dank voor aandacht. Dank u wel.
Thank you so much. Dank u wel. Then there is now the possibility for the members of parliament to ask questions. I would like to suggest that for the first two speakers, if you have any questions, please ask them in English. And for the other speakers, we switch to Dutch. Okay, Mr. Seder.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your contribution. Member Stansir, Member of Parliament for the Christian Union. I was wondering how the EU could help in the next phase in ensuring that the communities which you described and which you're representing could have a viable and sustainable future. What should the EU do, also in light of the current geopolitical situation? This question, I would like to ask that to one that would like to answer, because I feel kind of troubled asking one of the specific groups, knowing that you also represent a specific community. So the person that would like to answer, I would give them the floor.
We'll collect the questions. Ms. Maas.
Dank u, voorzitter. Ja, ik ga mijn vraag in het Nederlands stellen. Ik had een vraag aan de heer Nissi, maar misschien ook aan mevrouw Eskandari. Ik hoor u beiden veel zeggen over de minderheidsgroeperingen die er zijn in Iran. Die zijn natuurlijk hele grote groepen. In een situatie waarin Iran op een zeker moment in de toekomst mogelijk wel een democratische transitie doorgaat. Hoe ziet u dan die rol van die minderheden? De rol, maar ook hun positie. Ben ik benieuwd naar.
Ja, mevrouw Abdi.
Ja, dank voorzitter. En ik ga mijn vraag ook in Nederlands stellen. Ik stel mijn vraag aan mevrouw Shirgai, als het mag. Wat vindt u ervan dat er vandaag maar één spreker was eigenlijk die...
Oh, sorry. Then you have to switch to English. Sorry.
I will switch to English,
Yes.
Chairman. I would like to ask you the following question. What is your view on the fact that there's only been one speaker today who has refused to sit in in a panel publicly and transparently? And do you think that is an attitude that matches being part of a democratic opposition?
Mr. Elian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Madame Shiragai, you talked about war. How do you suggest the people of Iran get rid of the IRGC and the people who murdered them cold-bloodedly on the streets? Like, what should they do to win this fight?
Thank you. Start with you, Mr. Shiragai. If you all could switch off your phones, that would be very helpful. Please. Yeah.
Thank you for the questions. So I'm going to be brief about all of them. What can EU do? We actually have a plan which we are talking to different EU governments about it. We have a conversation. We had conversations with specifically the Irish government, who's going to get the heading the EU Commission from July, which already has started. The idea is the only path forward for Iran is through a democratic national dialogue process. And that has to be built through international support, because Iran geopolitically is situated in a way that we have so many forces trying to meddle with the civil society in Iran. This is not a new thing. It's been going on for centuries, we have to say. But there is a way to do it, and that's building a coalition of different governments, not just the EU, reaching out to global majority governments as well as the EU governments, and creating this buffer zone around the Iranian civil society to protect us from meddling from outside, so we can decide for our own future. We can sit at the same table with the people who are refusing to talk to us down the line, and carving our own future through the national dialogue process. That's going to take a lot of technical support. There's a lot of technical understanding within the failure of different processes of national dialogue all around the world. I'll give you an example of Yemeni's government and Yemeni's national dialogue. What happened the day after? That was a fantastic national dialogue day conference that was designed by the UN, but then the meddling of other governments collapsed that national dialogue the day after. So we want to protect ourselves from that kind of failures and creating mechanisms that helps us through that. In terms of how to get rid of the IRGC, I would say, I was saying that, and a lot of other academics and people who studied Iran were saying that before the war. War is not going to bring down the IRGC and the Iranian government. Why? Because it's a decentralized network. It's not a hierarchical government. Yes, there is a hierarchy on the top. There is a ruling class that is ruling the society. But when you look at how IRGC went through, creating its network of corruption, which I studied for some years and done an investigative report on it, it's a decentralized network that has these nodes that are following the orders from the top, but they have the autonomy to make decisions based on their own needs at the time. And then right now we have the divide between 31 provinces. So even if there is a ground war, which I think Trump is building towards that, and Islamic Republic is preparing itself for that, even with that land invasion down the line, the Islamic Republic is not going to go away easily. And we're going to see a long-lasting war in the region. There's going to be a lot of instability, and that's why it's more important than ever to prepare for that, to help the Iranian civil society to create collaboration, cooperation, create unity in Iran, and create a path towards a democratic future. That's going to take time. It's not an easy, there's no one easy solution for it, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. The other thing is, elephant in the room. Why not speaking to us? I think I have the experience and the privilege of interviewing him some years ago. It's more than 15 years ago. And even back then, when he was framing himself as a human rights activist, he was using a language which was quite unconscious. He was calling us as his citizens in his language. And it was like, challenging him on that. I was a young TV presenter wanting to make, name for myself, and I was like pushing and asking, why are you calling us your citizens? And since then, he refused giving interviews to BBC platform just because I challenged him on that day. I think that tells you enough.
Thank you. I think the next question was... De volgende vraag was voor mevrouw Eskander.
Het ging over de minderheden, toch?
Ja, die was hoe ziet de toekomst van
wat moeten ze doen? Het gaat om... op het moment dat je het over de minderheden hebt en hoe zouden zij gefeliciteerd moeten worden of... Ik zou willen zeggen, en dan terugkomend op het eerste panel, waarin werd gezegd van je pakt de grote groeperingen en de minderheden die zijn te klein, die neem je eigenlijk niet mee in de overweging. Dan neem je dus niet de hele beschaving mee in een overweging. Op het moment dat je wil dat er een vrij democratisch Iran komt, dan spreek je met iedereen vooraf. En zie je waar de belangen samenkomen. En wat je heel erg merkt is, heel veel mensen durven zich ook niet uit te spreken. Laat ik dat dan op dit moment met jullie delen. Jullie hebben net het vertoon gezien. Dit is niet iets unieks. De Pahlavisten, inmiddels bekend als term, zijn behoorlijk agressief, waardoor bepaalde minderheden zich niet eens durven uit te spreken. Er is een hele grote groep, die ik net benoemde als politiek dakloos, die wel wat willen zeggen, maar door de repressie of door de angst het niet eens aandurven om het gesprek aan te gaan op dit moment. Dus wat ik vraag is dat er misschien een safe space wordt gecreëerd vanuit de Tweede Kamer. Dat er gesprekken komen, ook met deze groeperingen, eventueel 1-op-1 of in kleinere sessies, waar ze niet zichzelf hoeven te tonen. Want daar zit een bepaalde angst.
Dank u. Meneer Nissi.
Ja. Ik zie de antwoord van de andere kant, zeg maar. En ik zie dat er zal geen duurzame stabiliteit zijn in Iran of in de Golfregio, zolang de legitieme en historische rechten van de volkeren, die al bijna één eeuw worden ontkend, niet worden erkend. De erkenning van deze rechten is niet alleen van belang voor de vrede en stabiliteit in de regio, maar ook voor de energiezekerheid en energievoorziening naar Europa of naar de rest van de wereld.
Dank u wel. Mr. Sahin, misschien wilt u nog iets toevoegen ook nog in deze tweede ronde? Nee? Okay. In Dutch or English? Yes. Ja, dat is goed. Oké. Ja.
Het overgrote deel kwam overeen, maar wat hij nog benadrukte is op het moment dat we uitsluiten en dus niet alle minderheden horen, door labels aan ze te plakken, dan krijg je geen duurzaam alternatief en een toekomst. Want dat is gewoon nodig om iedereen gehoord te hebben. En we moeten stoppen met labels plakken op mensen als separatisten, want het is ook het volk van Iran.
Dank u wel. Dank u wel voor het vertalen. Mr. Ullah, would you like to add something to the discussion?
Yeah, because thank you for allowing me. The question is that what you can do for, because Iran is a multinational state, Arab ethnics, languages, culture, and it is not a single unitary identity culture state. There you have Kurds, Arab, and Baluch, and other. Here you are saying that minority. No, they are a big nation, not a small one. Arabs, Kurds, they are a big nation. They should not be regarded as ethnic. Therefore, if you want Iran to be a democratic, plural state, then it should be a federation of nations. No, without representation of these other nations, non-Persian nations, Iran will not, be a normal state, I think. If you want to see Iran to be a normal state, then the identity, the existence of non-Persian people should also be recognized. I think so.
Right. Thank you so much. And with these words, round 2 has come to an end. Thank you so much. We will proceed with round 3 in a couple of minutes, and this will be Abdullah Mohtadi, and this will be through a video conference. Thank you so much.
Dank voor jullie tijd.
Bedankt.
Ik schors de vergadering voor 5 minuten, omdat we de techniek even op orde moeten brengen voor de videoverbinding. Wat is het, adjourned? 5 minuten? Mr. Mohtadi, can you hear us? Mr. Mohtadi?
Yes, yes, hello.
Yes, perfect. So, excuse us for the technical problems on our side. Thank you for being here. I would like to give you the floor to give an introduction of 7 minutes. So, Mr. Mohtadi, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Honorable members of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Dutch House of Representatives, dear Mr. Jesse Klaver, dear Ms. Kati Piri, honorable members of the Dutch Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for the invitation to appear before the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Dutch Parliament. I am truly grateful for the opportunity to address the committee, and I am pleased and honored to be here today. Dear friends, the war between the United States and Israel with Iran has for months placed Iran at the center of global attention, from the media to think tanks to parliaments and governments. Given the scale of the conflict and its impact, that's only natural. But we should not forget what has come before and what has even been the greater cause of suffering, death, and destruction during long, dark years of the ruling regime in Iran. Back in January, the regime carried out a brutal crackdown and mass killing of protesters who had taken to the streets to protest worsening economic conditions, corruption, and authoritarian rule. Thousands, and probably tens of thousands, were killed by the Islamic regime's security forces. 3 years earlier, we had the Women Life Freedom Movement, during which Kurdistan emerged as the leading force behind the broadest and most enduring and probably the most progressive movement for political change in Iran. That peaceful movement was also brutally crushed and drowned in blood. The point is, however impactful the current war is, and however significant its domestic and regional consequences may be, it is not and has not been the single defining conflict in Iran. For years, Iranian society has been locked in a relentless struggle for change, for basic rights, freedom, human dignity, and the chance to live in peace against the ruthless, corrupt, and adventurous regime. Take Kurdistan as an example. The violent repression of the Kurdish people began just 5 weeks after the victory of the Islamic Revolution in 1979, when government forces unleashed waves of gunfire on the protesting city of Sanandaj. A few months later, without any justification, Khomeini declared the jihad against the people of Kurdistan, denouncing them as infidels and launching a war of repression that has now continued for nearly 5 decades. In short, the Islamic Republic's war against its own people, against Kurds, Baluchis, Turkmens, and Arabs, against women, labor unions, students, journalists, the Baha'i community, and many others, began years, even decades before any foreign conflict. It began before the seizure of the US Embassy in Tehran, before the Iran-Iraq war, before Iran's proxy wars across the region, and long before the recent conflict with Israel and the United States. The domestic conflict has never ceased. There has been no memorandum of understanding between the regime and the people, and the ruling regime is not willing to sign a ceasefire agreement with its own people. That is why we urge Europe and indeed the world not to let the Iranian people's struggle for freedom, justice, and basic human rights, as well as the Kurdish people's legitimate struggle for freedom, to be overshadowed by any disagreements with the United States or any criticism of Israel you might have. We call on you to clearly condemn and isolate the Iranian regime for its heinous crimes, and to stand with the people of Kurdistan and all the people of Iran in their fight against ethnic, linguistic, and religious discrimination, and in their pursuit of freedom, democracy, basic human rights. That is in the best interest of the people of Iran, the whole region, and the international community. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohtadi. And I would like to give the floor for the first question to Mr. Seder.
Thank you so much. My name is Dan Seder, Member of Parliament for the Christian Union. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. I have a question concerning the role of the European Union. As we know, the last few months have been very painful, also for the Iranian people, and a lot of suffering and people who died. My question is, where do you see a specific role for the European Union in the next couple of months or years to hopefully ensure a transition towards a free Iran?
Mr. Mohtadi, we collect some of the questions. So first we go to Ms. Maas for your question.
Thank you very much for your introduction. You mentioned that we or the world needs to isolate the Iranian regime. Do you have any ideas on how we can do that? Because also this afternoon we heard, for example, that sanctions might not be so effective and might be symbolic. So I wonder what you think would be a good way to isolate the regime.
Mr. Elian?
Thank you for speaking to us, Mr. Mohtadi. How do you see, if we all succeed in this ferocious fight we are in against the regime and the regime would be gone, how do you see the future of Iran, and how do you see the position of the Kurdish people in a new Iran?
Ms. Abdi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. Mohtadi for your introductory remarks. A lot of questions have been asked, so let me ask another question. In your remarks, you mentioned that the situation of applying the Kurdish people and other minorities has been very grave, very severe. There's been cultural, religious persecution. And this has not only been the case under Islamic regime, but has been before. So I was wondering if you can say a bit more about that and how we can ensure that their rights are protected in a democratic Iran in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Abdi. Mr. Mohtadi, please.
Well, to begin with, thank you for your questions and your concerns. As I told you, as everybody knows, that in January there was kind of massacres in Tehran and big cities of in Iran, and it was time. It was time for the Europeans, for the international community, to at least call their ambassadors in Iran and made a big protest against the Iranian regime. We didn't see such a thing. So I think that diplomatic isolation is one way. Making contacts with the Iranian civil society and the Iranian political parties, the Pakistan and other parties are very important. So these are putting pressure on the Iranian regime diplomatically, and also how can I say, open doors of negotiation and engagement engagement with the Iranian opposition, democratic opposition, ethnic groups, civil society is the way that I suggest for the time being. As for the future of Iran, I think if Iran or when Iran is a democratic country, we think that the rights of the Kurdish people as well as other ethnic minorities must be acknowledged and preserved by the new constitution of Iran. That's a very brief answer. Anything I should add? Any new questions or questions I didn't answer?
Let me check if all the questions are answered, or are there any more questions? Mr. Seder?
Thank you so much. You responded to my question a few months ago. If I can paraphrase that, the diplomatic ties should have been cut or at least more intensified pressure than the countries or the parliaments did. Could you expand on that and also explain why the EU reaction also benefited the regime in a certain way? So could you explain and help us as parliamentarians to also create that causal, or help us see that causal connection?
Mr. Mohtadi.
It has been a kind of understanding or viewpoint by the Europeans that by dealing with Iran diplomatically and commercially in trade and diplomacy, you can have an impact on the Iranian regime, make them milder, more moderate, and eventually you will have a moderate regime that is a normal government, and you can deal with, like every other government, with weak points and strong points. But that isn't the case in Iran. Time and again, the Iranian regime has shown the world that they are not ready to compromise. They're anti-West, they're anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-Europe. They want to annihilate Israel. They want to destabilize the Arab countries and overthrow them. They are seeking a new Shiite empire in the region. They're seeking hegemony. As you saw during the wars, they struck the different countries, their bases, their refineries, their residential areas, their business areas. So this is the kind of regime that you see in Iran. I have no sign, I can see no sign of any for the better in the new or in the new rank of the regime, the new leaders of the Islamic regime in Tehran. So I think it has to be more political and economic pressure, more diplomatic pressure, and more engagement with the Iranian people. It's both its political parties and its civil society. And another problem with Europeans is that they have some probably justified criticisms of the policies of the United States administration, but this doesn't mean that you have to be more lenient towards Iran. They have committed heinous crimes, and they will do so in the future. They will suppress their people. They will more than before, and they will try to make new gains against the United States, Europe. They are choking the Strait of Hormuz. So you cannot deal with them as a normal country, as a normal government.
Thank you, Mr. Mohtadi. Ms. Maas.
Freedom movement in Iran openly is the way I think.
All right. Ms. Maas.
Thank you very much. I'm puzzled a little bit by what you say about diplomatic isolation and at the same time open the doors for civil society. Just to clarify, what exactly do you mean with diplomatic isolation? And in my opinion, you can only open the doors to civil society if you have people on the ground being able to talk to the civil society. Because as we heard already in part 2 of this session, is that you really need to talk to the people there to make a change. How do you look at that?
Mr. Mohtadi.
You have people there and you have people outside. For example, you have the biggest teachers' union in Iran for years. They're still alive and they're fighting for their rights in the society. We have very famous political prisoners inside Iran. And also we have political parties, we have political entities outside the country with deep roots in the society. Our party, for example, or Kurdish parties in general, have deep roots in the society. They have, it's just the tip of the iceberg that you see. Their headquarters probably is outside, some elements are outside, but the main body of our activities are inside the country. And we have been managed organize a coalition of Kurdish parties in recent months. This is just one example. The Freedom Congress of Iran is another example. It was a very, it is a very democratic, widespread, diverse combination or coalition of the democratic, both civil societies, human rights activists and organizations, and political parties, women activists, teachers activists, student activists, all kinds of people, ethnic groups. So there are people for you to take into account.
Thank you. Mr. Elion?
So thank you. I am still wondering, because you were not really specific, how do you see, again, if we succeed in this fight and the regime falls, how do you see the future and how do you see the Kurdish people inside the new future in a free Iran?
Mr. Mohtadi?
Well, Kurds have a population of at least 10 million people out of 90 million people, the whole population of Iran. They live in 4 provinces in northwestern and western Iran, with some adjacent pockets of Kurdish communities. We have a huge community, Kurdish community in Tehran and all that. We have Kurdish communities in the eastern part of Iran. So what we are talking about first is a new Iran in our opinion, if it is supposed to be expected to be a democratic one, it has to be a decentralized country, which with the recognition of the rights of ethnic groups. Iran is a multi-ethnic, multi-nationality group with Kurds, Azeris, Baluchis, Arabs, Turkmens, and others. So we think that a federal system is best for Iran. The Kurdish parties and their coalition has announced time and again that they are not separatists. They are seeking their rights within the framework of the Iranian society and Iran as a country.
Thank you. Ms. Abdi, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to follow up on that last remark about being called a separatist. You have been a political prisoner under the Shah regime, and now Mr. Pavlavi has refused to speak with you on a panel today and has called you separatist. So I want to know what your response is to that and what that says about the democratic opposition.
Mr. Mokhtari. Mr. Mokhtari, the floor is yours. It seems that we have a...
Can't hear you.
Mr. Mokhtari, now we can hear you. Can you hear us? Mr. Mokhtari? Ik schors de vergadering voor enkele ogenblikken. Gaan we even naar de techniek kijken. Dit is een rondetafelgesprek met hindernissen, zullen we maar zeggen.
The sound is on, and I'm saying...
Mr. Mokhtari, welcome back.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
It's good to have you back. Maybe you could say you were talking, but we haven't heard anything. So maybe you could start your answer on the question of Ms. Abdi from the beginning. Mr. Mokhtari, the floor is yours.
Thank you. What I was saying was that Iran is a multi-ethnic, multinational country, multi-religious country. It's a diverse country. It's a remnant of an ancient and medieval empires. So we have different languages, different religions, different ethnic groups. The best way for these different communities to live in peace together is a federal democratic system where the rights of every community, their cultural and political and administrative rights are acknowledged and preserved by the constitution. And that is a federal system. The Iranian political parties, the coalition of Iranian political parties, which we managed to build a few months ago, has openly declared that they are not for separatists. They want a democratic Iran, and they want to pursue their rights within the country of Iran. Did you hear it?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I would like to give you the possibility to give some. First of all, let me check if there are any questions left. Yeah, Ms. Maas.
Thank you very much. Yes, you're very clear on that you would like to have a decentralized Iran in the future. Could you imagine Iran to be a centralized state? I mean, if you look at, for example, France, maybe a good example, also a big country, centralized government. Could you imagine Iran also being centralized and then maybe divided in provinces, where provinces, just like in the Netherlands, do have some kind of self-government, but not being the central government? And especially given the fact that you are focusing so much on these federal state structure, but also in the light of the minorities that are in Iran.
Mr. Mohtadi.
Yes, even the European countries were more centralized. France is a clear example of that. But in France, you don't have, as far as I know, I'm not an expert on that, you don't have so many different languages. You don't have so many different peoples, different religions, different languages. Each people with its own land, with its own history, with its own culture. So you have to do something about it. And the level of national and cultural consciousness, the identity that people connects people together is more powerful than before, than even a few decades ago. So you have countries like Canada, like Spain, even like Italy, north of Italy. You have the German-speaking people, and they have their own rights. They're kind of self-rule or internal autonomy. Why is it wrong for Iran to have that? While Iran is ripe for that, is
Helaas treedt er weer een verstoring op in de verbinding. En de tijd is nu heel kort. Dus anders kan meneer Mohtadi komt er misschien in. En dan kunnen we afscheid. We zullen zorgen dat we netjes de heer Mohtadi zullen bedanken voor zijn bijdrage. Maar daarbij sluit ik dit deel van de ronde tafel sluiten we hiermee af. Ik wil graag alle aanwezigen hier hartelijk bedanken voor hun aanwezigheid. Het volgende deel, het is al een paar keer gememoreerd, zal in beslotenheid plaatsvinden. Daarom zal ik de bodes vragen om de zaal, ga ik even schorsen, dan wordt u gevraagd de zaal te verlaten. Wordt de vergadering